Well, we made it. As WWE recently announced, they are going back to touring here very soon, and they are starting in the state of Texas in the month of July, with July 16th having Friday Night SmackDown in Houston, then the Money in the Bank pay-per-view at Fort Worth at Dickies Arena, and then Monday Night Raw, July 18th at American Airlines Center in Dallas. And joining me very early this morning is a very prominent star of Monday Night Raw and has been for the last year and a half, former WWE champion Drew McIntyre. Good morning, sir.
How are you, buddy?
Now that we're in, like, it's here after over a year. You guys got to have WrestleMania in front of fans, but now there's a date on the calendar. There's probably a flight. There's rental cars. The schedule's coming back. How does that feel?
I don't know if I believe it's true or not. Like until it actually happens. It's been so long now that we've been in this unique situation we've been in. And WWE pushed through even during the most difficult times of the pandemic, kept our show going, and be it in our performance center, which was like a warehouse essentially. We brought the show from into the Thunderdome we're at right now, with all the lights, lasers, pyro, everything you expect from WWE, and all the virtual fans there, having a quick night of fans at WrestleMania, 25,000 fans. So unbelievable to have the fans back there live and making us appreciate that our fans are our number one superstar and create the unique atmosphere of WWE. And we went back into the Thunderdome. I love it. It's an amazing piece of technology, but there's nothing like our live fans. And the fact that we're getting back on the road, we're getting the live fans back in attendance, and we're starting in Texas seems absolutely perfect. So I don't know if you remember the last time, I had a huge capacity crowd, making me feel pretty good was at the Royal Rumble, January 2020 in Houston, Texas, when 40,000 people were there to watch me win the Royal Rumble and earn my first WWE title opportunity. So I'm very excited to get back to Texas with live fans.
That was going to be my next topic, was that Rumble in Houston. It was what feels like one of the more genuine moments of sort of the modern era of WWE. Like, everybody was happy to see you win. Like, your emotion in the ring was real after you won, and it was just one of the highlights basically of 2020. And then all of a sudden, boom, everything changes. You go from having that moment that has to be one of the highlights of your career to getting to do WrestleMania in a warehouse, essentially. So how do you look back on that now, having that moment with all of the fans, to basically get the moment you've dreamed of your entire life at WrestleMania, but then to get to do it in that warehouse?
I mean, that moment is up there with like top two moments of my entire career. Winning the Royal Rumble in Houston is realistically, I wasn't like one of the favorites probably going into the match. It was a surprise. I think that number one, I came out and eliminated Brock Lesnar, who had eliminated about 13, 14 men himself at that point, which got such an amazing reaction. But at the very end, we actually had the return of Edge, one of our Hall of Fame superstars who have been gone for 9 years. And there's been situations in the past when the fans don't get the person they want to, the person, they want to win doesn't win, and they turn on the match. And I had it in the back of my mind that, Edge gets eliminated here. This 40,000 people in Houston might be a little upset and boo the crap out of Drew McIntyre. But the fact that Edge got eliminated, and then minutes later I eliminated Roman Reigns, and they cheered just as loud for my victory at the Royal Rumble as they did for the Brock Lesnar elimination, just blew my mind and really cemented me as, we want, Drew to be our next guy, which felt really cool, being chosen by the fans in Texas, across the world, going by the videos I saw of my victory at Royal Rumble. After my 19 years in the business at that point, wrestling at that point, it felt really, really cool. And yes, WrestleMania wasn't quite what I expected. It wasn't 80, 90,000 people in my American hometown of Tampa, Florida, screaming, going wild. It was in, the WWE Performance Center in a warehouse, as you mentioned, essentially. But it was still very special to me. It was the only original content in the world, only escape for the world at the time. We brought the world WrestleMania over 2 days instead of one day, a weekend escape. My match was the final match, a feel-good story of many ups and downs in my career, which are detailed right here in my new book, Chosen Destiny. Get it now. And but yeah, I had the chance to make a lot of people smile by beating Brock Lesnar, winning the WWE Championship, and I did that. And even though there was no fans there screaming, there was millions across the world watching, feeling good about it. And I knew that because I saw the feedback, I heard the numbers: 14 million social media interactions over 2 days of WrestleMania, such positive feedback. It's been great. very proud of everything we've done. But realistically, my time as WWE champion, which was basically an entire year, we had no fans, no live fans. I got the opportunity to fight for the WWE Championship one time at WrestleMania, which unfortunately I was not successful at. But my entire time fighting for, defending the WWE title, we did not have fans. So I would really, really like the chance to win back my title, to get in front of fans live and finally hold it up. Because it's very weird to say you've held the WWE Championship for basically over a year and never had live fans there to hold up in front of. So that's a goal of mine. I'm going to see if I can pull it off before July 16th weekend.
It's a very unique experience that pretty much you by yourself hold. So,
yeah, I'm so thrilled about that.
And I hope we get to see it too, because not only do we get Raw, who knows, by next year at WrestleMania, which is also at AT&T Stadium once again, maybe Drew McIntyre is either walking in WWE champion or walking out WWE champion in front of 100,000 people.
That would be unbelievable. I remember the last, big WrestleMania in the AT&T Stadium. Was it AT&T last time?
Yes, in Arlington. Yeah. That was 2016.
Yeah, and that's the stadium next year for WrestleMania. It was so unbelievably big. I remember the Texas Mania, just sitting there and going, I've been to a lot of WrestleManias. I was signed by WWE when I was 21, was with WWE for 8 years, and gone for a few years and came back. I've been to many, many WrestleManias, and it was so freaking big. I remember being just blown away, by the size of the crowd. I'm always blown away by WrestleMania. It's such a spectacle, but in Texas, it was just a next level. And if I can pull off the big one, go in as WWE champion, or at least be fighting for the WWE championship in that environment, in a full stadium finally, I'd imagine by that point in Texas, that'd be a dream come true.
And I almost feel like being there back in 2016, like AT&T Stadium, the building is legitimately like almost built to host WrestleMania. Because it's the home of the Cowboys, but a football field still takes up a substantial amount of space. A wrestling ring is a tiny square in the middle of a sea of 103, whatever it was, 1,000 people. So you almost need the giant video board that's up in AT&T Stadium for the entire crowd to actually be able to see what's going on.
Absolutely. And plus, our WWE fans are way crazier than football fans. If you watched the Super Bowl this year, it was cool to see fans back in the Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, hearing them get a little rowdy. But then if you watched WrestleMania and you saw the difference, like our 25,000 fans can suddenly sound like 40,000 fans. And then you put 100,000 fans in the Texas Stadium, I assure you it's going to sound like about 1 million people on that night. It's going to be rocking all night long.
And you just mentioned it a second ago, but I'll bring it back. When you were a kid, did you ever think you were going to grow up to be an author, write your own book?
The obvious answer you want to say is no, of course not. This is unbelievable. But as a kid, I had all these crazy dreams. Like when I was a kid, I've been saying, as I detailed the book since I was 6 years old, I'm going to be in WWE. That's the dream, no matter what. I'm going to pull it off. I was 13, 14. The first book I ever read cover to cover was Mick Foley's Have a Nice Day. Went number one in the New York bestsellers. He was like literally number one as a wrestler. It really gave some credibility to wrestlers and their intelligence. At the time, he penned that book by himself. And I probably should have read a few books prior to that. I was 13, 14 years old. But you can write an English essay, Death of a Salesman, just by skimming that bad boy. But I remember reading it cover to cover and thinking to myself, one of these days, I'll have a book of my own. I didn't think it would happen this soon. 35 years old, still got a few years left of my career, but the opportunity was brought to me and pointed out that, your story is so unique. You've had so many ups and downs and so many lessons you've learned that you're willing to talk about in media interviews like this or on the flagship show on Monday Night Raw. Would you be willing to put it in a book and kind of help some people out there perhaps through your journey and the lessons you've learned? And I spoke to my wife about it. The big selling point for me was the times we're living in. It was during COVID that it was presented to me, and I knew a lot of people were struggling. I could see it, especially online. And I spoke to her and said, listen, if one person can be helped through my story to know that there's, always a light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how dark times get, then it's worth doing it. And that was the main reason to put the book together. And it was written for everybody. It's been simplified. It's not just for wrestling fans. It explains the ins and outs of the business, how things work down to the littlest detail. And although wrestling, is what I do, that's not the main theme of the story. It's more my journey and the lessons learned along the way to make me the man I am today, from the chosen one of Vincent McMahon at 24 years old to fired from WWE, to starting up from rock bottom from 10 feet down and making my way back to my dream at the top of the mountain, and all the tragedy and triumph along the way.
I gotta say, your old entrance music, the one that had the actual lyrics, is one of my favorite songs I think WWE's ever come out with. And I know you're probably stuck with the one you've got right now for a while. You're on a pretty good run right there. But do you ever want to bring back the old Chosen One sort of theme song, like with the actual band and like full song, or are you gonna stick? Do you like sticking with what you got?
You know, hear about it basically every day. I get at least one tweet a day telling me broken dreams, Drew. And I always say, like, one of these days, I love my theme music I've got now. It kind of matches who I am, the character I am today, especially now that I come out in the kilt with a big sword. It's
Bunch
the
of
Scottish.
fire, you know.
Yeah, the Scottish war music certainly matches that now. I don't know if the Broken Dreams would match that, but perhaps there'll be a time, maybe even in AT&T Stadium, some significant event where I think it will get an opportunity to come back. And I believe we do have the rights to the song. And I think the right time, the right opportunity. The big thing I always say is every single person out there that talks about this song has talked about it for the past 8 years that I've seen it nonstop every day. You better know every single word, because if I fight for it and it happens and 100,000 people aren't singing it, I'm the one that's going to get hell when I get to the back.
Well, I can say it's been in workout playlists for me. I've listened to it. I could probably, it's been a while since I've listened to it, but I could probably knock out a couple of bars if I had to.
All right, well, make sure you're there with cue cards for everybody.
Now, granted, you've talked about it being without fans, but the past year in the Thunderdome has been obviously the most successful year of your career, just championship wise. Do you have sort of a favorite moment of this standalone era of just WWE and wrestling for everyone?
I mean, there's been a few, like a lot of matches I've been really proud of, a lot of, I guess, feuds. I've been really proud of, like, the time I spent fighting with Randy Orton over the WWE Championship. He's somebody that when I won the title, I knew if I get the chance to get in there with Randy, that's what I'm really going to prove myself. He's a measuring stick of wrestling in general, not just WWE. He's a living legend, such a Hall of Famer, the best at everything he does. And I knew when I faced Randy, it's my chance to step up and show I belong at the top level, or I don't deserve to be champion. And that period, going toe to toe with Randy on the microphone, in the ring, every situation that we were in over a period of 4 months, which is a really long time for a wrestling feud. People have such short attention spans. Going for 4 months was a long time. So I'm very proud of that 4 months and the fact that I was able to step up, learn from Randy, but at the same time, go toe to toe with him that entire time.
And Drew McIntyre notwithstanding, if you had to name an MVP of the Thunderdome era, man, woman, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, who has stood out the most to you given the circumstances of the past year plus?
Everybody stepped up. Since the beginning, like watching when a few people were trying to find themselves and figure out how we do this interactive profession without the fans there to interact with. And I really observed a lot of people finding new ways and throwing things against the wall and see what stuck. I think a few of the names that people mention constantly. I mean, when Sasha and Bailey were together, they did some really cool stuff across both Raw and SmackDown. We saw the formation of MVP and Lashley. I remember them getting together when I first won the title. Lashley and I wrestled at Backlash last year and also this year. And they were just getting together. And I remember, like, that combination I knew was going to be perfect. And MVP was the piece that Lashley was missing. To watch that come together during this time has been awesome. Sheamus was kind of flying under the radar, having these incredible matches every single week. And finally, people took notice as him and I started having the matches, going, wait a minute, he's been doing this entire time. Turns out Sheamus is really good. How did we not notice for over 10 years? Even though he turned his back on me, terrible friend. But yeah, I mean, everybody, realistically, that's just a few names off the top of my head. And obviously the Thunderdome in the past 6 months or whatever, Roman Reigns has shown a new side. That's really caught everybody's attention. Is obviously closer to the real person, and you can feel that right through the screen. So that's just a few names, but everybody stepped up.
And again, a lot of the conversation is dealing with no fans. The last year, you talk about throwing stuff against the wall, making it stick. Like, how were you able to do that? How did you gauge things you're doing in the ring, things you're doing on the microphone, things you're doing in backstage segments? How did you gauge things you're doing well versus things you thought you could improve on versus, you know, those types of situations?
I guess in my case, it's kind of experience. And also, my ears are open to anyone that's got ideas to try new things. I was aware when I won the WWE title, right at the height of everything, and we're in the performance center, in that warehouse, that everything rolls downhill. And I kind of had to set an example of, all right, how are we going to do things here? I'm the one pulling the wagon. I'm the title holder right now. I'm the champion right now. I want to show everybody, hey, I'm doing it. Everybody should be doing it right now because there are no wrong answers. And I was the first one looking down the camera lens, like breaking the fourth wall is not something we did in the past. If you're watching a movie, the characters don't look right down the camera and look you in the eye, kind of take you out of the movie if they were looking at you directly in the eye. But realistically, I thought, well, we're about connecting with everyone and reaching everybody at home and making that personal connection. And generally, we'd be able to do it within the arena and you could feel it through the screen, but we didn't have that atmosphere. So the only way I felt like it was going to work was literally looking into people's eyes at home. And I started doing that and I never get told off. So I kept doing it the entire time. And I saw some of our other talent try it. Also, embracing my environment was a big thing for me. I watched a few of our superstars who perhaps haven't wrestled in front of nobody. I have. I came from the UK scene when it didn't exist, and I did do shows in front of 5 people, a farmer and a dog. But I was very big on embracing the environment. I watched a few of our talent come out and start doing their interviews where they were looking at imaginary people, and I was like, oh, this is cringeworthy. If this is cringeworthy for me, it's obviously going to feel like a disconnect for our fans. So I was very adamant about walking out and just embracing what I had around me. I was like, okay, here's the commentators. I mess around with the commentators, chat with them. If the cameraman got too close to me, I'd shake him around. Believe I was throwing out some catchphrases from the popular television shows of the time. The big one I did was, hey, all you cool cats and kittens. My wife dared me to do and see if we could get a little GIF going online, a little whatever they're called. GIFs, I believe, GIF, whatever you call it. And segment 1 of a 3-hour show, hoping that somebody would see it, going, what on earth's going on in WWE right now? So they would tune in to our show. And I just kept trying different things. And when it came to the interviews themselves, obviously, generally, we have 20,000 plus people screaming over the top of you. And you've got to raise your voice. And a lot of them are kind of more shouting than anything because you are trying to hear yourself over the crowd and you're participating with the crowd and going with what they're giving you. Sometimes they're giving you the what treatment where they're kind of trying to entertain themselves when you're talking. So you have to, I don't know, deviate from the script, let's say. But without fans there, suddenly it's just silence and it's just you and a microphone. And it makes things very different. And I saw that as a gigantic opportunity. If you knew who you were, you knew who your character was, you had a chance to develop that character on such a deeper level, add layers to the character, speak in a regular voice, like the way I'm speaking right now, not having to raise your voice, but more bass in your voice so everybody could hear you and understand you, especially somebody with an accent. So that time, I think a lot of people really maximized their minutes, really developed their characters. And when we're back in front of live fans on a regular basis, that we're about to be in Texas, I think the fans are going to really understand a lot of our characters on a lot deeper level than they would have had we not had this period. And a lot of our talent maximized it.
Does it feel like being a rookie again, whether debuting on SmackDown a long time ago, debuting on NXT a while back, getting back to Monday Night Raw? Now there's another date in front of you that's like, okay, this is a big deal. What's coming? Does it feel like being a rookie again, or are you in more of a veteran mindset, been there, done that sort of thing?
I mean, it's never been there, done that. I would certainly not say rookie because I used to be so terrified when I was younger and anxious all the time. Now I'm just excited, like very excited of the live fans back. And so you never know what's going to happen. You never know who's going to get cheered, who's going to get booed, like how the whole show is going to go, because a crowd can change the dynamic of everything. And I love it. Like I'm a kind of person that just goes with the flow. Like if we're in the Thunderdome, generally we get a good idea how people are going to react and we kind of go with the flow within the Thunderdome. But with a live crowd, like if I walk out there one week and they're not quite digging what I'm doing, that's fine. Like I'm the kind of person, like Cena was a master at it. He would just go with the flow and he's so interactive with the people. And I love being interactive with the crowd. And it's something I only get the chance to do leading up to winning the Royal Rumble 2020, when I finally started just being myself in the microphone. I wasn't talking about eating carcasses and I don't know what other nonsense I used to talk when I was just big, angry, bad guy. But I was finally just being this guy, real Drew, a bit silly, a bit sarcastic, tries to tell dad jokes, not necessarily funny, but when the bell rings, kicks butt. And I was having fun interacting with the crowd and with a good back and forth going. And not a lot of people do that these days. Obviously, The Rock was the master of it. So I'm looking forward to just seeing what the crowd give me so I can give it right back.
All right. One more question. It's a question I asked Damian Priest a couple of weeks ago when I interviewed him. He's another guy with a very theatrical
sexy voice. Yes.
Well, that too. But he's another individual with a very theatrical entrance. And I asked him, and I'll ask you the same question. How much fire are you going to try to use in your entrance inside a football stadium full of 100,000 people?
It's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, maybe more.
And to preface it, Damian did say as much as they would legally allow him to.
All right. Well, let's just say if that's Damian's plan, if I'm fighting for the title, I'm going to have to go in and argue, I'm fighting for the title. And Damian's got as much as are legally allowed. I'm not saying to break the law or anything, but I'm not saying to break the law also. So let's go with that.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. Drew might burn down AT&T Stadium at WrestleMania.
Heck yeah. I'm in a blaze of glory.
Well, before that, we will get to see you here in a couple of weeks, and both in Fort Worth and in Dallas for hopefully on Money in the Bank pay-per-view, and then again on Monday Night Raw. And go buy Drew McIntyre's book if he wants to plug that again real quick.
Oh, yes, this old thing right here with little mentions on the back from individuals such as Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H. What did they know anyway? Go buy it.
That's the one. Thank you, Drew McIntyre.
Thank you, buddy.